and welcome to another episode of Let's Rant. Today, we are going to be talking about one of the most divisive periods in bittersweet candy history. A period that many regard as boring, terrible, pointless, and stupid, but on the other hand, was also emotional, heartfelt, amazing, and in my personal opinion, perfect. But in order for you to fully understand what is the Paulo show and what makes this so special, we must take a trip back in time, to a simpler time, a darker time, to a period of BCB where apathy was rampant and the future was uncertain, a period where we had no idea what was going to happen, and the comic seemed to hit its lowest point. And why, yes, I am talking about post-December BCB. How did you know? Now, while I covered a good portion of these chapters in the December rant, I didn't really talk about the period after Lucy's suicide attempt because, oh boy, that was a hell of a time. After Lucy's, let's call it exile from the comic in chapter 75, breaking up, things were bad. Everyone was depressed and reeling from the loss, not just in the fan base, but with the characters themselves. The drama became heavy and awkward, seemingly dancing around the subject as we awaited for Mike to have some form of punishment for being the catalyst. And yes, I do blame Mike for Lucy's suicide attempt, and no, I do not excuse him for December, because this is not excusable behavior. Hell, even when it tries to get lighthearted and give us a nice comic relief chapter, it's one of the most skin-crawling chapters I've ever read. No, I don't want to read about Daisy and Abby awkwardly talking about and trying to practice safe sex. Ugh. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a prude, but it's like I got to experience fatherhood. Finding out that this sweet, innocent girl you've seen grow up, and all of a sudden she's a teen now and talking about sex, boys, and it's just like, I don't want to know that, man. I don't want to think about that. Not with Daisy. Leave that shit for Paulo, the problem child, alright? I can deal with that one. Speaking of Paulo, though, oh boy, was he having a time with it. Dude was getting shuffled around in development, and throughout the December era, I had no idea what the fuck Teshy was trying to do with him. He was being pushed into situation after situation to pour on the pressure and push Paolo ex Lucy, even going so far as having him break up with his girlfriend at the time, and Jasmine, over these totally random and coincidentally rekindle feelings that popped up once Lucy's other main ship burned down. But the thing was, it was really hard to sell us on a ship when one of the captains just whimsically jumped off his old ship. And the other one is suicidal. Sorry if I don't buy into it. And after Lucy's exit, Paolo became an emotional wreck. His confidence was shot, he became frustrated and depressed, his scenes became way too serious for him to live up to, and it just seemed like he was aimless. And it all came to a head when Chapter 80, Happy Hour, rolled around, when finally Mike reveals that he fucked up and pushed Lucy over the edge with December, and Paolo rightfully delivers the boy his rights. And when I saw that, I stood up and said, yep, awesome, sweet. Job's done. Let's get out of here. What? But there's still 25 pages left. Yeah, I don't give a shit how many pages say are left. That's the end for me. I got what I wanted, so I'm gonna get out while the getting's good. You hear me? But what happens next? But nothing. I don't need to see what happens next. I already know what's gonna happen. Tess is gonna pull some bullshit on us and make me feel sorry for Mike. She's gonna make me forgive him, and I don't want to forgive Mike. I don't want to feel sorry for Mike because he drove his best friend to suicide by picking out her deepest insecurities that only he knew. He hurt her in the worst fucking way, in a way that only he could, and for nothing. So fuck Mike, fuck this comic, fuck whatever happens next. I don't care. I don't want to care. I don't want to read. I don't want to even think about BCB ever again. I am done. I am done with this community. I am done with Teshi. I am done making shit for this stupid, terrible fucking community that's never given me anything. And BCB can do whatever it wants, but I am done. I am going to do whatever I want, make my own stories, and I'm never going to touch or ever think about Bittersweet County Bowl ever again. And I did. I left BCB and all the baggage I accumulated with it behind. I blocked it from my mind and went off to do my own thing, to never worry about the terrible, crushing drama of Mike, Paulo, Lucy, or Daisy. I was free to leave, and I did. Starry-eyed and with an idea to run with, ready to see where it would take me.
I'm done, holding on to the past, trying to make $1 million and then go and take
Nothing. 2 years. 2 whole years wasted. I was at my lowest point. The idea I had to go off but couldn't take off. My confidence was shot. I kept trying to go back to the drawing board to figure out what was wrong and what I could do to improve it, and in the end, all I had to show for it was 2 wasted years of freefall and a desire to do something, anything. But every time I tried, all I could think of was this stupid fucking furry webcomic. Because before I left, I gave this community everything I could. From a shitty comic dub, to shitty AMVs, and even a few shitty songs, if you'll believe it. I was a desperate kid begging for attention, throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck. And of course, I made a fan comic. I promise I'm not going to go over my whole drama with the community and Teshi, but I can't fully express these feelings about the Paulo show without recognizing the state I was in when I read it. Because you may think I'm crazy now, but I was fucking losing it way back then. I was angrily spinning my own wheels, overanalyzing myself, only to realize that I had accomplished nothing from it. And all this is to say that I fucking hated BCB. I hated Teshi. I hated myself. I blamed my experience with it for my own shortcomings, and I had to do something or else nothing would change. So I channeled that anger and overanalyzing, overthinking, overcritical energy and decided to use it to make something. Just to get it out, just to say I could, just to prove to myself that I could see a project through and finish what I started. I would make a story, a comic, in the only way I knew how. Damn the consequences, damn my skill, and damn Tashi. But if I were to pick it back up again and make this story, I would need to go back and look at this comic again and truly see it for what it was. Not for what it promised, not for what it did to me, not for what it meant, but for what it truly was. Because the one thing I learned in that 2-year span was the only way to kill your inner demon is by taking a step back and looking deep to recognize it as human.
Well, there's a rose in the twisted love, and the eagle flies with the dove. And if you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with. Love the one you're with. Love the one you're with. Love the one you're with.
So with all that out of the way, let's actually talk about the Paulo show. Firstly, let's set the ground rules. The Paulo show is a weird beast because it's hard to determine when exactly it starts and when it ends. For me, the Paulo show does not start until volume 5, because that was the point when we were free of the Lucy drama. We finally stopped talking about it, it stopped hanging over the comic, and the characters seemed to try and move past it, and be able to talk about other stuff, which is what led to Paulo stepping in as the lead role, and thus creating the Paulo show. And so our journey starts with chapter 81 in Take Heart. A drama-centered chapter that, despite its moving parts, including Abby and Daisy's relationship being on the rocks, Paulo's new relationship with Rachel solidifying and getting its first hurdle, somehow this chapter manages to keep it fairly light and entertaining with lackadaisical humor, thanks in large part to the supporting cast and new characters strutting their stuff and fleshing out this world, including ya boy, the big homo himself, oh boy do I love Matt. He was the best, because out of everything, he was just a guy. He was just some friend of Rachel's that made Paulo jealous, but he was also a person, a character, a nice guy, a likable character who just happened to be gay. And it wasn't used to force some message onto Paulo about being gay, it wasn't to ship bait, it wasn't a key part of him, it was just all he needed to be. Matt. And he doesn't steal the show or is marketed to us as the next big thing or the gay one. Honestly, he plays second fiddle as the B plot of this chapter, which could just be summarized as Paulo going through the whole chapter crying, "Oh baby, you got what I need. But you say he just a friend. But you say he just a friend. Oh baby,
You got what I need. Would you say he's just a friend? Would you say he's just a friend? Oh, baby. Girl.
Except, actually, surprise, he really is just a friend, and in fact, he's gay. Oh, silly Paulo, your relationship with Rachel is safe. Abby and Daisy, on the other hand, not so much. Daisy lets slip her feelings about Mike in a happy hour, and so Abby decides to break up with Daisy. Paulo hears about this and consoles Daisy by telling her that this whole thing is fucking stupid and they should just suck it up and be a. But upon seeing how broken up Daisy is about it, he decides to help out, with Daisy offering to also help him out with the B plot. So Paulo decides to cook up a scheme involving. I've had a drama-free year and it's gonna stay that. Wait! Jasmine! Hey Jasmine, I hadn't seen you since. At first I felt bad because I really liked you. But I thought about it more and I'm glad we broke up. I looked up to you, but after everything, I realized you're really immature. Yeah. I remember now why I hated your character so much and thought you were the worst fucking character in this comic, you ungrateful Oh, I shan't. It's Christmas. It's okay. Happy thoughts, happy thoughts. We're being nice today. Positivity. So, Jasmine ends up relenting and helping Paulo out by using her political pull as school secretary to set up a fundraiser once he reveals that it's actually for Daisy. Making this a sweet little adventure chapter as everyone gets to play a part and help solve a problem, with hijinks ensuing when Daisy's nervousness to buy Abby flowers leads to Paulo buying the flowers for her. I'm skipping over a lot, of course, because we've got plenty to go over and I can't stop to point out every part that I liked. But just know that between all these points, there are jokes happening that still make me laugh as I'm writing this out. Though these people know I have a girlfriend, they're friendship roses. I think of you in the shower. See? Friends. One joke that I will talk about, though, is the great gag of the plan going awry because. Put down my name. Right. Oh, that Paulo. But this is quickly resolved as Daisy explains that it was supposed to be from her, but Abby is still dwelling on the past and talking about how he's unsure about the relationship, which leads us to the scene. The hook. The moment when I knew things were different. The point where I started to believe again. The scene that made me have faith that Paulo really was the guy and could lead us to the brighter future we were yearning for. Don't you see, Abby? It'll never happen because he's dating someone. But then, oh my god, who the fuck cares? Mike and Daisy will never happen. She wants to be with you. But shut up! Daisy's been whining about your stupid ass for days now. She obviously feels something. She even got you a flower. Girls don't do that. She likes you enough to deal with all your crybaby shit. Who wants to deal with hearing about your dead mom all day? She does. So make out with her.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
I clapped when I saw it.
No joke. When I read this scene, I actually clapped. I gave a standing fucking ovation because holy shit, your boy did it. He called out the bullshit drama developing in front of him. He's me. He just like me for real. This teen ain't gotta worry about no acne because this motherfucker got proactive. Let's fucking go! Yeah, that's right, you tell him. And for those of you that don't get it, let me reel it back for you and tell you that this whole thing of Abby breaking up with Daisy because Mike X Daisy was a thing is such bullshit. First of all, as Paulo said, that ship was never going to be a thing. Last time that Daisy's crush over Mike was relevant was all the way back in Volume 1, where it flamed out hard, and Mike buried that shit like a dog turd on the lawn. And Abby should have known that since, well, he was there. But thank fuck, Paulo takes charge and quashes it right then and there. It's over. Abby and Daisy are together again. Paulo figures out Matt's gay and has nothing to worry about, and everything is going to be okay. The one solid relationship of Abby x Daisy is solid, and we never have to worry about it ever again. And nothing bad will ever come out of this scene. Positivity. 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 Positivity.
Oh, I just can't wait to get home from school so I can get online and talk with my boyfriend.
Chapter 82, the Stacy chapter. You were to tell me years ago that one of the best chapters in BCB would be a fucking commissioned Mike X Stacy chapter, I would have said, man, how bad must the new chapters be for that to be the best, huh? And you'd laugh and say, yes. But there's a good reason why this is a standout chapter, even among some of the best of BCB, because it highlights a key thing this series of chapters does that sets it apart from the rest. It expands upon existing characters we've already been introduced to and fleshes them out, not by giving them some more deeper character or dark backstory, but rather by giving them a small new wrinkle for us to sink our teeth into that builds upon the pre-existing notions we've had. And in this chapter with Stacy, it's a perfect example of that idea put into practice, as it's all centered around Mike and Stacy forced to spend a day together to study, which, yes, it's a bare bones excuse to have these two together, but credit to Tashi, even though it could have easily been phoned in and boring, it actually plays with the characters well and does everything it can to explore these two's dynamic, including having a cute nod to one of the most early chapters and jokes in BCB by poking out the massive love notes Mike got back in Volume 1. It's great, although I will say for the longest time I thought that was a Maya, but oh, Volume 1 style, I love you. But seriously, the chapter really does make you care for Stacy. Despite her being one of the weakest characters who's been bumming around since the middle school days, getting to see her outside of her pairing with Katie, the weakest character still bumming around since the middle school days, allows us to see the character in a different light, thus allowing her to be presented through a more favorable lens, and find out things about her that we otherwise wouldn't have known, like the fact that I hope strawberry lemonade is no.
Yo, this NyQuil beat my ass. That is not that funny, but like, I can't stop laughing.
She's a nerd. I love that bit. Only losers like that stuff. And I guess we're in Loser Town, USA. But this is the exact thing I was talking about when I described adding a new wrinkle to a character to help flesh them out. For a character like Stacy, who up to this point has been nothing but a one-note background character used as a strawman example of the mean popular girl stereotype, giving her a guilty pleasure like playing video games is a godsend. It brings new context to a character that most everyone wrote off as a one note and never gave a second glance at, and makes her more tangentially involved in the story by also having this be a connection she shares with other characters like Susan, Amaya, and Abby, in a way that doesn't feel too forced. Seriously, I cannot praise this chapter enough. It is the gold standard for what a pointless chapter can do, and what Teshi can accomplish in not only crafting a great, purely comedic chapter that is actually funny and delivers laughs to the most jaded of hearts, but also it showcases Teshi's ability to expand and develop characters into being likable, enjoyable, and relatable characters in a natural and grounded way, without compromising the one note basis of the characters they were and just tossing it aside like it never happened. And this is a crucial element to the Paulo show, because Pop Quiz Hotshot, there's someone I'm forgetting, isn't there? There's a certain character I neglected to gush over last chapter, wasn't there? Oh, I was so wrapped up with all the other stuff that happened and that amazing scene in Take Heart, I forgot to talk about the Golden Girl. Well, it was a pretty busy chapter, and I did not want to do my girl dirty by having my praises shuffled in among a bunch of other awesome moments. Not when there is a chapter right here that has the biggest scene and shows exactly what makes her the best dog in show. The greatest girl, my hero, my absolute favorite character in this godforsaken comic, Rachel.
I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me.
Oh, you were a sneaky bitch for this one, Tashi. Oh, you slippery toad. You dirty for this one. Hiding one of the most pivotal character moments and heartfelt scenes of this comic tucked away in what is on the surface an average run-of-the-mill forgettable nothing chapter, and you hit it pretty well. Small Fry's basic premise is that it's Paulo's birthday and your boy is moving and shaking. He is hyped as hell and he is going to throw his hat into the job market and find what sticks, the result of which is revealed to us and the rest of the characters by way of, I really want to thank you guys for helping me out this year. Don't worry, it was fun. Hey, holy shit. Tess? What are you doing here? I thought you were dead. Holy hell, girl, where you been? Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Yes, oh man, I miss you so much. Look, guys, it's Tess. We finally got to talk about her. Oh, we gotta talk about her right next chapter. Next chapter we will talk about Tess. Of course, I would never ever want to draw attention away from bestest girl in the world, Rachel, especially not to talk about Tess of all characters. No, never. I would not dream of putting a whole 2 paragraph aside about how amazing Tess was in this chapter segment, specifically reserved for Rachel. but for real, Tessa's appearance isn't all that important, as she's mostly pushed aside and used for setting up Paolo's new job, working in fast food, which, to be fair, is fucking great. You think so? Well, I've got a great discount for you, babe. Ooh, so what's the special? I'm glad you asked. Today's special is the. Oh, come on! It's fucking great. God, I love this chapter. I love these jokes, and I love the Paulo show so much. This scenario in general is just perfectly Paulo. He's got a simple entry level job doing dirty work, and while it is hard and stressful, he's happy, he's proud, and making the most of it. It's endearing as hell and highlights one of the key aspects of his character. But where does Rachel factor into this, you ask? Well, it turns out Paulo isn't just set on improving his employment status, but also his driving status. And it just so happens that the only person willing and able to help him out in this endeavor is. Why didn't you ask me sooner? The only thing Tessa's get for is being a bitch. Hey, go easy on her. Rachel! Yes, finally, indeed, we get to gush about the best girl, Rachel. She's come a long way from her roots as one of the more annoying and one-note characters in BCP. Similar to Stacy, she was initially pigeonholed into being a stereotypically bitchy popular cheerleader in Volume 1, and it didn't help her case when all she ever seemed to be used for was bashing the OG Golden Girl Tess. Even after discovering that there was a good reason for her to be bitchy about Tess, it was hard to get behind Rachel as a character, even though Volume 2 tried hard to sell her as a big side character. It was hard to shake that stigma. Not helping matters was her involvement in one of the most controversial chapters in Back and Forth, which, while set up her crush on Paulo that follows through here, really only solidified the notion that she was a dumb, silly slut character with a bit of emotional baggage. It wasn't until Volume 3 rolled around that we got our first real sympathetic moment with her in Pillow Talk, where she became more of a fleshed out and well rounded character. No pun intended, showing that underneath that ditzy, slutty, stupid veneer was a great big heart of gold, and actually getting to see the pain Tess caused helped pull sympathy towards this character that a lot of people, myself included, overlooked. She revealed herself to be a character that exuded a lot of heart, and in her own way, maturity. And for every bit of praise I lump onto the Paulo show, every single part of it is owed to the handling of this one fantastic character. I didn't mention it, but the one shining moment in Volume 4 that I honestly cannot knock too hard on was Chapter 77, Study Buddy, which set the stage for Rachel to come in as Paula's new girlfriend. In a time in the comic where we weren't sure what was going to happen, with Lucy being lost, Paolo being a wreck, it was hard to sell us on a new ship for Paolo. But Rachel stepped in and seamlessly put the comic on her back by being the emotional rock this comic needed. When everything was falling apart and all hope was lost, she was the one person to look at these sad sap cats and say, "It'll be okay." And a cynical part of me at the time couldn't enjoy it for a reason I've talked about before in Witch Hunt, in reference to Jordan. The more a character is put into the foreground, the more likely it is that they're going to get hurt. Rachel could have lived happily as a side character legend among the greats like McCain and Tess, but what she was doing in getting a relationship with Paulo was putting her directly in the crosshairs of drama to come in and destroy her, to join the line of bodies that thought they could fix him. Tess tried it and she failed, despite being one of the strongest characters in the comic. Jasmine tried, but she was too weak of a character and couldn't elevate herself beyond being a narrative cockwarmer to substitute for Tess. And while Rachel had all that strong character development, sympathy, and relatability, who was to say that the same fate wouldn't befall her too? It almost seemed inevitable that her relationship with Paolo would end badly, and that she was going to get burned as well. So why should we put any emotional investment into this relationship? Why would we ever think that this time it would be different? Well, because Rachel isn't like Jasmine. And I'd be damned if I said she was like Tess. The problem with Tess was that she loved Paolo, but she wanted him to change who he was and grow up when he wasn't ready for that. Paolo loved Jasmine, but despite him trying to be understanding, changing his behavior, and trying his hardest to be good enough, she just wasn't ready for the serious relationship she thought she wanted. Rachel, on the other hand, never asked him to change. She accepted him. She accepted and loved him for who he was. She knew exactly what he needed. He didn't need someone to tell him to change his ways. He didn't need to bend over backwards to please the person he loved. All he needed was someone to be there for him, an emotional rock to support him and remind him that he's worth it. But what set her apart from all those that came before her, more than her fantastic appearance in Study Buddy, was this scene, where Rachel teaches Paolo to drive at a drive-in theater and reality comes bearing down on him. Why would you even want me though? It's so good to me. But it always comes back to Lucy and that's so goddamn unfair. In a moment of vulnerability, the weight of Paolo's feelings come down on him as he recognizes how unfair his relationship with Rachel is. He realizes that he still loves Lucy, and dating Rachel, even unofficially, is only going to end in pain. But the thing is, this is all just for now, but the longer we spend together, the harder it's going to be. everything you do, and I want to fall in love with you, bye. Rachel understands. I think she understood it long before Paulo did, but it didn't matter. She didn't even mean for their relationship to get serious. She just wanted to help him. This one moment is what sets her apart from every other character in this comic. She knew she was diving on top of a ticking time bomb. She knew this relationship wasn't going to last, but she didn't care. All she ever wanted to do was be there for Paulo, to help him through the worst period of his life and show him that he was good enough, just the way he was. She served as a beacon of stability when emotions were high and everything seemed so chaotic. This one character rode the ship, and if it wasn't for her influence in jumping on the grenade and being in a relationship with Paulo, there was no way these chapters would be half as good as they are. She steered him right by letting him steer on his own. She helped rebuild his confidence after Lucy's suicide attempt shattered him. If it wasn't for Rachel, Paulo would have been lost, probably falling into the extreme of leaning more into the faux playboy persona to fuck the pain away, or resigning to the depression and becoming, well, Mike. But this one character, this one moment, this one relationship saved us all. Take Heart made me cheer again for BCB. Local Area made me laugh with BCB. But Small Fry and Rachel made me care again. In her, I too felt that it was okay. While it may not be safe, I was willing to strap back in, ignore the bomb under my seat, and just enjoy the ride.
Picture you and me in the cabin by the sea. Sit up on a porch and we can burn a couple trees. Our friends are all around and the storm was a no-show. Said we look better in the black and white photo. What the photograph don't show is where we're headed tomorrow. And when we have to go, we'll always be together in the black and white photo.
So with that out of the way, on to the next chapter, 84, Scenic Route. Which if there was a run to the litter for the Paulo show, this would be it. Not to say that it's bad or anything, it's wonderful and really sweet, and much like all the other chapters, it has a really strong and memorable character moment in it. The problem is, this chapter has a certain heavy weight attached to it that it just couldn't shake off. Even back then, when I read this chapter, I couldn't fully appreciate it because of the unshakable knowledge that this would be the last time Tess got to hang out with the gang. And worst of all, even here she wasn't allowed to shine. The chapter is centered around Tess inviting the gang, minus Sue, to a picnic to a familiar riverside park, with callbacks aplenty for old readers to enjoy. Look, they're gonna race along the trees, just like that one time when... yeah. Well, thankfully that doesn't happen again here. Instead, they were treated to some nice subtle nods to Abby and Daisy's relationship being a little shaky still, with Abby seeming to be absent-minded throughout the chapter, if not a bit negligent towards Daisy. Honestly, most of this chapter is just the kids goofing around and, well, acting like kids, which is refreshing. I really like it. The chapter serves as a sweet reprieve from the heavier chapters that we've had, and it's nice seeing the gang just have fun. And yes, that does include you, Mike. And before you ask, no, I am not going to have a gush session over Mike. He hasn't earned it yet. I may have accepted Mike's failures as a decent human being, but that doesn't mean he is forgiven. It is nice though. And I wish to reiterate that, yes, in between all these skipped over pages, there is gold here. Where's Abby? I thought he was behind you. I thought he was behind me. I thought we meant to leave him behind. Eh? 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 Oh, that Paulo.
No.
So the setup is paid off as Abby's negligence ends up getting him left behind. Meanwhile, Daisy does accidentally get hurt, which leads to her staying put with Paulo as company, while the rest of the gang goes off to get Abby, leading to the actual meat of the chapter as Paulo and Daisy sit and talk, thinking about where they are in life and what the future may hold. It's a really nice and sweet scene. So nice they did it twice, but we're not talking about that positivity. So, overall, this chapter is solid. On its own, it serves as a great nothing chapter that shows that the kids are alright and looking to a brighter future. Although, for some, it's not so certain. If this chapter came out now, one could argue that it's shipbaiting for Paulo and Daisy, but to me, their dialogue came across more as siblings that care about each other, with both seeing the best in the other, with a bittersweet tinge of sorrow as they see how they're both headed on different paths. It's really nice, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the one gripe I do have about the Paulo show. This chapter just happened to fall in line with an anecdote I have. Because while I was going through my 2 years of illiteracy, I did actually take a look at a page because I heard grumblings over the art style, and I figured I'd take a glance and see what all the hubbub was about. And it just so happened to be this page. I remember it because my exact words were, wow, this is actually pretty neat, you know? The proportions did make the characters' age seem a bit older and ambiguous, but this is actually pretty cool. These proportions, the washed out colors, this is a really good way of artistically showing a flashback without just blatantly using cloud panels. It's great. Good job, Teshi. And the old dogs I talked to at the time just went, oh, do we tell him? And sadly, the chibification of characters was the one thing that actually did carry over from the Paulo show. But I'm forgetting something, aren't I? Did you notice there was something missing from that summary? Oh yeah, Tess. Despite her technically being in it the whole way through, aside from the Paulo and Daisy scene, Tess really didn't get to stand out here. Sure, we get a nice heartfelt bit where she says how much she enjoyed just being there with the gang, but all it really does is remind us of the unfulfilled promise that this character gave, and it makes my heart ache as I knew this was the end of the rich girl, the OG golden girl, my favorite lie, Tess. For context, Tess was a pivotal supporting character in Volume 1 for BCB. In fact, a number of great character moments, chapters, and arcs can be traced back to her involvement. From the Christmas chapter to setting up the Acapulco arc, her purpose in the toolbox of characters of BCB was very versatile, setting up adventures, new conflicts, and at times serving as an audience surrogate to ask questions about the other character's history to facilitate exposition naturally. She also had a spunk to her that made her likable, a complicated history that made her sympathetic, and a perspective on life and drama that set her apart from the rest of the pack. As the oldest member of the group, she brought a more mature perspective to a lot of the drama and scenes that the kids would get into, but she also had this childish excitement and eagerness to be involved with the gang. She wanted to see them grow and help them become better people, and that falls right into the biggest involvement she had when she had her relationship with Paulo. Serving as a positive force in his life, Tess dating Paulo was a perfect match as two punky kids trying to make it in this cruel world. And with Tess's maturity being a great opportunity for her to build him up to follow suit, it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Except for one little snag. A small chink in her immaculate armor, and no, it wasn't that she wanted more out of Paulo that he couldn't understand. See, Tess was afflicted with a terrible, debilitating disease when she was born into this world. An awful condition that she had to deal with early in her life. See, she was a fan character. A death sentence for most cursed with such a cruel fate. But she showed so much strength in what she was able to do in those early chapters. We all hoped that maybe she could beat her condition. Maybe she had just one last trick up her sleeve, one last hurrah, one last adventure, one last send off to carry us through and remember her by. But alas, the damage was already done. And in this chapter, we see her succumb to the bitter, sudden end. The promise of suspense in Volume 2, setting up Tess's final year with the gang to be a senior year to remember, would sadly only lead to her being muscled out in favor of more heavier drama, her presence becoming less and less as she was forced into irrelevance. From being a powerful force and moving these characters with deep connections to all of them, to being just a shadow of her former self as she would become nothing more than a side note in Volume 2 and an occasional speed bump in Volume 3. The fact was, the fireball, take charge, punk rock girl we all once knew and loved was dead. She died years ago, and this chapter just shows she was the last to know.
You would build your castle in the sky. Now no one can tell you lies. Heaven's not so far if I can see you in my dreams. And when I feel my time is near, I won't be sad 'cause you'll be there. I know you're right there waiting for me. Yeah, yeah.
Well, now that we've had a good laugh and some great times, it's time to get into the big stuff. We've had our sweet fun chapters, but now it's time we get serious as we get into chapter 85, Total Recall. By far one of the most memorable chapters in BCB, with the second most impactful moment in recent memory. Look, we get one, alright, I get one. What was the most impactful moment, you ask? Oh, that's easy. Love again. Why, yes, I am proud of myself. Very much so. Thank you for asking. Your boos make it all the more worth it. But seriously, Total Recall is an interesting chapter to revisit because going back to reread it allowed me to bring up and talk about some of the moments that got overshadowed by that one big moment and the little things that led up to it. One thing I want to point out, though, about the early part of this chapter, though, is all these callbacks. Well, so long as it all goes better than last year. What? Oh, right. Planning on another trip to the carnival? No. It straight up just pokes at the carnival chapter, which I guess it has to since it's another prom chapter, so it would naturally draw a comparison to the previous prom chapter. But it's still worth mentioning since BCB has this nasty habit of preferring to just push aside things from Volume 1 that it doesn't like, with a common consensus at the time being new readers should start from Volume 2. That's the best way to read BCB. And while yes, we did also get nods to past gags during the Stacy chapter, but that was a commissioned chapter with a character that hadn't been relevant since Volume 1. Here, it's more in your face and lingers on that a lot, with whole pages used to remind you of what happened and how far Paulo has come in his romantic journey. But it's not just Paulo though, as that jab at the carnival wasn't just a one-off. It actually sets up this scene with Abby. Good for you. Yeah, the awkward talk between Daisy and Augustus that reaffirms his character and shows that the AU of Love My Way was correct and that he was just intending for that moment to be nothing more than a kiss, but it was still over the line. The scene where Daisy repels Augustus but tells him that he needs help, that was in this chapter. I completely forgot. And I bet you did too, didn't you? But as far as the actual chapter, Paolo goes to the prom and we get to spend time with all of the juniors. Of course, there's Rachel, but also Jess, Matt, and Jordan, who is going through his own character arc, it seems. And I love it. It harkens to a critique I had with the comic at the time, and even now, in that it shows that there is life outside of the main character's plot lines. While I've complained and maintained that Jordan's no good, very bad, inconsequential love square is fucking pointless, in here it helps flesh out the world a bit. Much like the Stacy chapter, it shows that these side characters we may not care about have lives of their own little drama arcs and romantic interests. It's nice. Oh, it is weird to compare him to Wait a second. I just know she's ready to say the word. This is some Sandy bullshit right here.
You know when you're not the one in the middle of it all for once? It's actually totally, completely obvious.
Welcome to my life.
Oh, ha ha. Very funny, Tess. Is that why Roxy gets shoved aside and cast away like she never existed? Is that meant to be like how Mike treated Lucy? Jody. Positivity. But we were robbed. Everyone gushes over how adorable the twink team is, but we had this cutie patootie waifu be right here. She had a fucking name. She had potential. We were robbed. Oh well. Girls hang back as the boys drive home, and we are treated to an actually nice bit where Jordan sympathizes with Paulo a bit, and it's sweet before they all get Charlie St. Clouded. And wait a second. I get to use the freight. Oh my god, get in the car. We gotta get out right now. I gotta show you something. Okay, so getting Charlie St. Clouded is a term that I and only I ever use. If you find another person using that term, that is me. Do not reveal yourself until the time is right. I've been waiting years to use the term because it perfectly describes a common trope in media. The phrase comes from the movie Charlie St. Cloud. Have you ever seen Charlie St. Cloud? No, of course you haven't. It's a stupid, boring fucking movie from 2010 that is only known for two things. One being that it stars Zac Efron hot off the heels of High School Musical in a dumb melodrama about a guy talking to his dead little ghost brother, but the other was that in the trailer for the movie it prominently featured the trope where two characters are having a benign conversation where out of fucking nowhere.
Charlie?
And now the cursed knowledge of the phrase, getting Charlie St. Clouded, is in your brain too. But jokes aside, we really should talk about this scene because it does something very, very well. Pacing. And I know, I joke and get angry at the overuse of splash pages in recent chapters, going so far as making a drinking game out of Eternal Flame for how many there were in that. But in Total Recall, I'm going to tell you to do something that I would never tell you to do under any other circumstance because this is actually important. I want you to stop right now and go to the official Bittersweet Candy Bowl website. Now, don't click anything yet. Do not look at the front page. Do not make direct eye contact, okay? Don't read the comic. This is very important. Glance at the pretty colors, but do not read the words, okay? I'm going to guide you through this, all right? This next part may be tricky, but I need to be very particular about this. Some people watching this may not have actually read BCB, so we have to be very delicate and very particular about this. This is a live bomb we are handling, and I do not want to be responsible for any of you who have not been caught in this trap to fall for it now. So keep your eyes firmly at the top of your screen where it says Bittersweet Candy Bowl. Right underneath there are going to be a few words. You are going to click the word archive. Now, this is very important. There are going to be a list of chapters. Do not click any of them yet, all right? You are going to count the numbers next to the chapter titles, and you're going to scroll down the list until you find number 85, Total Recall. If you see a banner that says Volume 6, you have scrolled too far. Calmly but firmly scroll a little further up and you should see Chapter 85. Now, you will notice that under the chapter's description there are a few titled links. You are going to click the link that says Blinding Light. It should take you to page 25 of 42. Click on that comic page and you will see what makes this scene with all its splash pages blow every other excuse for pacing splash pages out of the water. It is fantastic. It's minimal, and it's Teshi at her most brilliant. It's dramatic pacing in a webcomic done right. It's Teshi utilizing her artistic talent to perfectly set a scene. The stark contrast of pages filled with word bubbles to a hard splash page of white ruggedly brushed to fade into black, the realistic watercolors working in perfect comparison to the cartoonish art style we had been accustomed to in Volume 5, fading softly into white again to reintroduce us to the cartoonish style in a bouquet of flowers. The use of longer vertical pages to turn what would have been 3 splash pages of nothing into only 2 pages. It doesn't waste your time. It perfectly paces itself and puts you into the place of Paulo's waning consciousness, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's so good. There's a reason it's the one thing people remember from the Paulo show. The way this scene is handled perfectly exemplifies what Teshi is capable of. This is what made me realize that Teshi wasn't good. She was great. She was an artist and she is able to do fantastic work. Even when the characters look like munchkins, she could turn it serious and make you shut up without missing a beat. I mean, think about it. Paolo just got Charlie St. Clouded, one of the oldest tricks in the book. We get baited with Lucy coming back when we know that wasn't happening. It was bait to make us think Lucy was there to see Paolo when even back then I knew that it wasn't just for him. It was because her brother was in the car too when it got wrecked, and so her family probably insisted she come see him. But none of that mattered because this scene was fucking perfect.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Did you die? I think I made it. What a relief. And the aftercare is good too. We got everyone showing up to Paolo's bedside and showing that they care. It's filled with some well needed comic relief that, much like the rest of the Paolo show, is really fun and sweet. And it's capped off by a talk with Tess explaining how, like Paolo, she too has progressed and moved on from who she was in the last prom chapter. She shows that she's in a better place now and is able to move on. Yeah, it's kind of forced, and it's blatant exposition to explain her lack of presence in the last two volumes, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It was perfect. For the first time, I can say with utmost sincerity, it was perfect.
My uncle shoots heroin. My father used to do cocaine. My mom used to smoke weed with her friends when I was 8. Smoked weed when I was 12. Sold weed at 14. Bombing for pieces like fucking for virginity. Conscious rap is bullshit. Gangsta rap is a fraud. This is real rap. Bang your fucking head through the wall. This is drug music. Stuck with a syringe in your arm. I'm the truth like the name of the song. Yo, my uncle shoots. My uncle shoots.
Well, folks, we made it. We're now at the end of the line. Back when I repledged my vow of literacy, this was the last chapter to come out, and what a chapter it was to go out on. I've talked about how this volume did so much for the side characters of BCB in fleshing them out and giving them redemption through insight and allowing them to showcase their personalities, from Stacy to Rachel and even to Tess, who got to have her brighter future in the end. But there was one last character Teshi wanted to touch on before we left. A character that had been there since Volume 1, and while he had his presence and was no doubt a fan favorite for some, it was about time we gave some love to the boy, Augustus. And boy does this chapter deliver on that. Now everyone has basically agreed that Augustus is alright and accepted him as a main supporting character, and arguably the best supporting side character we have left in the current group. But keep in mind, back then readers didn't have the same feelings as we do now regarding Augustus. At the time, he was a pretty divisive character. He had moments and there was reason to like him, with his devil with a heart archetype and some endearing qualities, but you'd be hard pressed to say he was the best character in BCB. The guy was a snake, intentionally elusive, and not to mention, that... And yes, I am using the old original versions of the volume. Thank you for noticing. While I usually use the current version of these scenes to illustrate my point, I feel the need to use the original pencil versions here because you need to remember the volume 1 you read now is not the same volume 1 that readers who saw this chapter read. While Teshi's changes to those volumes in the omnibus may not seem that big or significant, the little changes that are there add up. And all of this is to say that, remember, in this chapter, readers didn't see him as the cynical, jaded, edgy bad boy with a hardened heart of gold that he's established to be now. We didn't see him as the good boy Augustus. We knew him as the, hard R cat. Needless to say, this character needed some cleaning up. Some redemption, if you will, some sympathy, and it was not going to be easy. But if this series of chapters has shown you anything, it's that Teshi is more than up to the task. And don't be fooled. Trapped isn't just a character chapter to flesh out and build sympathy for Augustus. It also served an important role in re-establishing Alejandro, the one main physical antagonist in BCB, giving readers a reminder that even though he hasn't done anything since Confrontation in Volume 1 years ago, he's still out there, he's still irrationally angry, and he's still a threat. And even though this edgy boy may have some dark spots and you may not like him, he's likely the one faulty cog that's keeping this rage train stuck at the station. Well, we've already seen Augustus's bad environment and living situation. We already know he's got a bad life. If people weren't moved by that knowledge back then, nothing was going to change their minds. Why would they care?
You might have Flap and the rich lady under your spell, but it's gonna take more than that to impress me.
Oh, look at that, you little scoundrel. He ain't hurt nobody. How can you be upset with that? Especially because this time, it actually is a flashback. In fact, one of the most memorable flashback sequences in BCB history, and it serves multiple purposes. Not only does it give us better insight into Augustus by showing us how he got roped into Alejandro's gang, but it also gives us insight into Alejandro's past as well and shows us how much of a monster he is by showing us the ex he talked about in Confrontation, Melanie. In these two characters, we can see both sides of the coin for Alejandro, and what makes him such a bastard who is somehow able to manipulate and keep a gang around even if it's just two people. Through Baby Augie's perspective, we can kind of understand how he could get swept up in the moment and view Alejandro's situation and environment as enviable. He's given the freedom to be away from his neglectful family. He's given responsibility and a sense of worth by working with Alejandro. For an impressionable kid, it's not hard to see the clear and present pros of sticking around him. But with Melanie, he could never ignore the glaring red flag of being too close to Alejandro. If it wasn't for her presence and influence on baby Augustus's life, things could have ended much differently. Chances are Augustus would have gone full snake and embraced the gang lifestyle, becoming as antisocial and sociopathic as Alejandro as a means of adapting and, in a sense, thriving in his terrible environment. But, while people may throw shade and judge Melanie for, well, we'll get into that later. Sadly, we have to. Melanie was the one guiding force for Augustus to show that this life wasn't what he wanted. She showed the ugly side of Alejandro's temper and the restrictions that come from sticking with him. She showed him what true abuse was, but also, she showed him what he should be striving for. Not just a faux sense of freedom by latching yourself to another monster, but by going through the system and using what you have to get out of your environment altogether. To set your sights on something more, to strive for real stability, and she was an interesting character too. She had a wisdom and disillusionment, but she was also a punk and had an edge about her. It wasn't quite clear what she was up to in the gang, but one thing that became apparent was that when talking about freedom, Augustus wanted to be free of his terrible life. But for Melanie, she wanted to be free of Alejandro. And yes, I know it's the hard R, but not to be reductive about what the implications of this scene are, or minimize the gravity of the situation, but I hazard to maybe knock that down to lowercase r. It's still an R, okay? It's still an R, but well, the thing is, if you want to argue for the hard R, you'll need to answer the question, what's their age again? And if you want to figure that out, well, you'll need to solve, oh fuck, it's the BCB flashback time equation! I hate it so much. BCB scholars have died trying to map out this equation and figure out exact ages for characters in flashbacks. It will turn your mind into mush. But to illustrate my point, I am going to have to explain to you the basic formula to solve this equation. So, if you're trying to solve for x to find Augustus's age at this time period, you're going to need to find his current age. So, for this, we are going to use his scholastic year, as it should give us a solid 1 to 2 year age range that we can directly use for comparison. That was the easy part. Now you're going to have to archive dive in order to find the earliest point in the timeline where the events we are talking about could have happened. But since this is the first time we've seen this event take place, which is the reason we're doing this stupid equation in the first place, we will need to look for what was the next earliest point where these events were referenced, and that's actually easy as the answer is confrontation. But Augustus wasn't even introduced as a character up to that point. We didn't even know that he was at the same school as the kids, but we do know he is 2 grades higher than the gang during confrontation. So we take the difference in years between our main characters back then to where they are now, the answer being 3, and apply that difference to Augustus's current grade year. And now you have an accurate age range of Augustus during confrontation. But remember, we're not looking for the age range of Augustus in confrontation, we're talking about an event that happened before confrontation. So slap a big less than symbol next to whatever number you came up with. But wait, he's not an actual baby during this chapter, so we have to put a floor on how old he is during trap. We could guess it based off of his appearance, but then again, Augustus's nickname in this chapter is actually Baby Augie. So what is the youngest he could possibly be? 5, 8, 10? Whatever number you settle on, apply a greater than symbol next to it, and congratulations, you figure out the approximate age range of Augustus in Trapped. I'm so proud of you. You just finished the first part of the equation. Now you're going to have to do it again, but harder this time, because now you have to solve for what age is Melanie in this scene, and you don't know. The closest thing you can do to determine her age is by going off the assumption that she is around the age of Alejandro and Toby at this time. So you need to do the equation again to find out what age is Alejandro. But that's much harder to corroborate because you will have to go outside of the comic and look up what number Tashi gave for his age during that time, and that number could change. That number could be wrong or throw every part of the equation out of whack. That's why when determining Augustus's age range, we use the school year, because there is a tight typical age range for people in that school year, assuming he didn't skip or miss years, which would throw things way off. It is the most accurate way of properly determining what age these characters should be around in a particular time frame. But nonetheless, now that you know Alejandro's age cap based on the number Teshi gave during confrontation, you know that he has to be younger than that number, so put a less than that number on your age range, and since we have an approximation of Augustus's age range, we can put a greater than symbol on that age range, since we know Alejandro is older than Augustus. Oh, I'm sorry, is your brain melting? Wrap it in tinfoil and put that back on, because
I'm not finished with you!
Because we still haven't solved for Melanie's age range. The closest frame of reference for us to solve for that is by taking Alejandro's age range in this time period and assuming that the dating range for him is, we're just gonna guess and say, fuck it, 4? So apply that variable to the solution you've put onto Alejandro's age range as a variable lesser than, greater than, or equal to 4 with a minimum value greater than y determined by Augustus's age range in this period. And now you have a fairly accurate approximate age range for how old these two characters were in this chapter. But not in this scene.
I'm not finished with you!
Because if you'll remember, there was a time skip before this scene. How long was that time skip? A few years. Oh, so what does that mean? Well, that means we have a variable greater than 1 to add onto our estimated values. And there are a lot of values greater than 1, man. There are so many numbers greater than 1. Just pick one, fuck it. I mean, just guess, because that's what we're doing here, okay? We're just guessing. You don't know how old these characters are, you don't know what the age gap is. Well, actually, it says it's 2. 2, why the fuck are we doing this in the first place? What the hell? And yeah, you can ask Teshi, but guess what? She doesn't know either. You think she crunched the numbers and did this stupid fucking equation herself? Hell no. I asked all my mathematician friends who went to college, and none of them could make sense of this equation. Just throw your hands in the air and say, fuck it, they're close enough in age. Because it doesn't matter. Was it the hard R? Who knows? Was it manipulation? Probably. Was it fucked up? Of course it was. It's fucked up people in a fucked up situation being fucked up. We don't need to dive deeper to make it even more fucked up, okay guys? It doesn't matter. None of this even matters. because Melanie's dead.
He was just shit wall to wall from Mr. Bean there.
Yes, for her crimes of thoughtery, the thought police have come to take her away. Okay, but for real though, I shouldn't skip over this scene. Melanie is a lover or hater character. Some won't get over her relationship with Augustus being sus, to say the least, but at the very least, she was an interesting and compelling character in her own right. She was clearly in a terribly abusive relationship, desperate for any way out, and clinging on to whatever glimmer of hope she could find. And while it wasn't right to put Augustus in that situation, she at least showed understanding and maybe a bit of guilt about it right after she did the deed. Her manic breakdown post-coitus shows the kind of person she is. Despite her cool outward appearance, she's broken. She's desperate and kinda nuts. It's a classic tragic romance, and at the end of it, she showed genuine concern for Augustus and wanted to keep him safe, going so far as maiming him in order to draw attention away from Augustus being the person she cheated on Alejandro with. She's a divisive character, no doubt, and for those that hated her, I can't say I blame you, but I just can't blame her. To me, Melanie was a victim of circumstance. She tried to make the best of what she had, and when it came down to it, she wasn't afraid to fight back and protect the one she loved. She had a role to play, and she did so perfectly. She showed Augie that running with Alejandro was not sustainable, and while he could stay, he needed to find his own way out. Just like her. In the toolbox of characters, Melanie's was to explain what makes Augustus who he is. Her relationship puts into context not only his outlook on life, showing why he's so jaded and moved by Lucy's melodrama, but it puts context into his relationship with other characters. His hard press on Daisy in the carnival makes sense now that we've seen how he was treated the last time he ever felt loved. And there's a clear parallel between the two as he sees Daisy as a symbol of innocence, purity, and a brighter future, not too dissimilar to how he seemed to Melanie. But also, this contextualizes his relationship with Lucy. He was overly cold to her because she was the main target for Alejandro and probably didn't want to get attached to her initially. But after seeing that same desperation and getting to know her more, he couldn't stand to see her suffer the same fate as Melanie. And speaking of Lucy, cut the smarmy shit, you're not fooling me. You'll find a way, you're a survivor, you know. She makes a little appearance at the end, and it's at this point that we're reminded that it's been 2 years since we saw Lucy. Huh. And her appearance here makes a lot of sense, given that Augustus's only main interaction with the gang has been through Lucy, as no one else would touch him with a 10-foot pole. We get to have a nice little back and forth between the two, and it's at this point where we realize that it's been almost 2 years since she was last seen in the comic, and you know what? That's okay. At this point, most people have resigned to life without Lucy, at least for now, because these last few chapters have been absolutely wonderful. It's not to say that the comic is best without her, but it's been good. We're good. And seeing her in this small bit, just ribbing and talking with Augustus, it's sweet. It reminds us that she's out there somewhere, probably doing her own thing. She's free. And hopefully she'll come back someday, bigger and better than ever. And when she does, we'll be right here waiting with a bunch of stories to tell and adventures to cover, with new characters, developments, maybe better arcs to come. The way things are going, we'll be right here waiting.
You don't love me, I don't think you ever did. And if you hadn't tried to kill me, I'd have stayed for the kid. There's nothing more for us to say. Got my mind made up, I'm walking away. Sometimes we just outgrow the role that we play. Hope you find a happy ending to your story someday.
And back then, that was exactly how I felt. After I gave up on it, suddenly the comic got better. More than that, it got good. Tashi, Veronica fucking Vera, did the impossible. She made BCB great again. She realized the potential we always talked about and executed it with actual perfection. After 2 years of stewing in anger and bitterness, I checked back in only to find that she turned this ship around. She did it. She took her time. She let the characters develop. She opened up the toolbox of characters and let them have fun. She let them be themselves and show what they could do. And I didn't even talk about Paulo. I mean, this man fucking did it. He managed to fit into the spotlight perfectly, and he did so not by changing who he was, but by simply being himself. Instead of trying to force this sinking ship to be all about him or blowing it all up and changing the whole script, instead, he relied on the support and help of his supporting cast to help patch up the holes while he just kept her steady. The Paulo Show showed us that this comic didn't need to have big sweeping changes or nuclear level drama bombs in order to keep our attention. It could play it soft, it could keep it light, it could be serious when it needed to, and when it pulls a twist, it doesn't need to feel like a malicious backstab. It can feel earned. It didn't need to have our characters become more fucked up than they already were in order for us to feel for them. They just needed to be fleshed out. They just needed to show their perspective and show us who they really are. Paulo Show gave us hope. It gave me hope. It reminded me of what I love about this comic, the characters. I've heard criticism about how, oh, BCB is so difficult to write because you have so many characters. You fool!
We've got diversity!
It is our strength!
It is this magnificently diverse toolbox of characters that makes this comic amazing. If the Paulo Show highlights anything, it's the versatility and strength of these characters. All the little moments and small scenes in these chapters may be light in terms of plot or development, but they show the fun of these cats. It brings life back into this soul-crushing world of BCB, allowing the bigger moments to stand out instead of being the only thing of note. Being able to joke before and after the storm. Not cynically, but wholeheartedly. And it wouldn't be as good if these characters weren't so characteristically diverse. The fact that Paulo is the one to step in and save Daisy's relationship is interesting because we know he doesn't know how to handle that. But he does it. And he does it in his own way that makes the chapter and situation stand out and not feel like a reneging on the problem set up in the previous chapter. It feels like a natural progression. It's the characters getting involved with what is happening around them, being proactive, taking a stance, and trying to fix things. The Paulo Show is a prime example of how we don't need Mike to be the straight man and main focus. We don't have to have Lucy here to make the comic worth reading. Maybe it's safe to come back now. The trap concluded, and I noticed the next chapter about to begin. For a brief moment, I thought, let's see what happens next. But I stopped myself. I decided no, because that wasn't the reason I reread BCB after vowing to never do so again. The reason was because I finally had an idea for a comic. I had the drive and the determination to see it through, and I wanted it to be fair. I wanted it to be faithful and strict to the canon, to these characters that I loved. So I caught up with the canon and let Trap be the splitting off point for the two of us. I said, BCB is in good hands. She can do what she wants with it. It's her comic. And I believe now that she'll take care of it. Do the right thing. One day, Lucy will come back to us, and it'll be great. Until then, I have an idea, and I want to see where it goes. One day, who knows? It's all said and done. We'll look back and we can compare notes. See where the deviations lie and what I wanted from the comic and where Teshi went with it. I'm sure whatever she does, it'll be great, but it's not for me. It's for you now, the readers that stuck around, the ones who weathered the tide and got to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Enjoy it. But I don't want it anymore. I don't want to tie myself to Teshi again. I don't want to make stuff for the fandom. I'm gonna make something. I think it's great. I hope you'll enjoy it too. But this is for me. The comic may be in a better place, but I still got some things to say. And I need to get it out before I can fully move on. And you know, I remember that day. The day I closed the book one more time and walked away. Before going out and doing what I said, and making a fan comic that was a love letter not to BCB, but to the characters that inspired me. To give them the ending I want them to have. And who knows, maybe Teshi will do something similar, and it'll be a great contrast to see how better it could be. Hello? Oh my god, they just made Paulo. So that's going to be it. Thank you all for watching this review of the Paulo show in its entirety. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a happy holidays. Wait, that's not true. Excuse me. That wasn't the entire Paulo show. The Paulo show era was the whole period where Lucy was gone and Paulo stepped into the main role, but Lucy is not back yet. She's not going to be back for another 3 years. Well, okay. Technically, the Paulo show stretched on into Volume 6, but come on, this video's already so long. I've already covered those chapters in the blog. You don't need to stretch this out more. But you haven't even covered all of Volume 5. There's still 2 more chapters to cover. I mean, maybe you could skip over Class of '08, but how can you skip over Boy Toy? Snap! I already covered those. Just read the blog. I'll put the link in the description, and if you really want to know my feelings about those chapters, you can make a Tumblr account and read my thoughts on all of the chapters from 87 up to 103, where we switched to making videos. Right now, though, we are being nice, and we are not going to talk about any of the chapters that came after that, okay? Okay. But, you know, how nice you've talked up these chapters, I might just go and read them for myself. Maybe it'll interest me so much I'll just read the whole comic. I know what you're trying to do, you know. Shit. If you weren't a fictional fucking character, I would kill you where you stand. We are trying to be positive. Then why do people hate the Paulo show then? Hate it because it was all for nothing. When the Paulo show came out, people didn't like it. Most people didn't, at least. And there were a few reasons you could point to. The obvious one was that Lucy was still gone and we didn't know what was happening with her, but some didn't like Paulo and didn't care for his developing drama, but those people were wrong. It wasn't fair to pin the comic's success and entertainment solely on Lucy, and it wasn't fair to be upset that Paulo was getting all the development when he was the one main character who desperately needed to have development. But some people hated it because they saw the Paulo show as something else. They knew that no matter what was happening, despite how good these chapters were, despite how much fun these chapters are, none of it mattered. They saw it for what it truly was. Filler. It was a dangling of keys to keep us entertained and stop fussing until Teshi could set up all the pieces in place for Lucy's return, and the next big drama could start. You know what the real problem with the Paulo show is? Is that for all the good it did, for all the amazing moments it brought us, for all the wonderful heartfelt character bits it gave us, it would all be reduced, reused, and recycled. Instead of keeping up the natural progression of his character, Paulo would be bashed over the head with forced development to excuse his behavior in a pointless, insulting way. The fun wink and nod dialogue and character-driven comedy would give way for more visual and cynical fourth-wall gags. Paulo fixing Daisy and Abby's relationship would be for nothing, as the two's relationship would become a toxic sham not long after this, and we would be treated to a bullshit finger-wagging and told we were wrong to clap at and enjoy Paulo telling Abby that he's stupid for breaking up with Daisy. The exceptional pacing and subtle downplayed scene of Paulo's car crash would be done again terribly in Love Again. Daisy's talk with Paulo about their future and the potential of them going their separate ways, with their life paths potentially pulling them apart, would be rehashed in moments apart and college material. Trapped's development of Gustus would seem to only serve in making us forgive him, as Melanie would never be brought up again, and Lucy may as well have never even heard of her story. Even its building up of the scumbag that Alejandro is would end up being revised and escape route. Tess would end up leaving the comic in 2 chapters, never to be referenced again, and Rachel. Oh god, Rachel. She would get it the worst. That bittersweet, wonderful, heartbreaking moment of her in the car talking about the futility of her relationship with Paulo. Paulo showing self-awareness and guilt as he pours his heart out to her, saying how she doesn't deserve this. It gets brushed aside and may as well have never happened. That she could remove every one of these chapters and the difference would be negligible. All except one chapter. And you know what that was? The fucking Stacy chapter. Because that MMO group of hers would be referenced in Guest of Honor as well as Popularity Contest. But other than that, it was all for nothing. These wonderful, amazing moments, this golden era of progress and development, the best chapters of Bittersweet Candy Bowl, didn't even need to be here. And before I made that 133-page trek out into writing a long-form story, as I closed the book on BCB one more time and repledged my vow of literacy, a cynical joke crept in my mind. It's probably best to get out while the gun's good. Chances are it's just a matter of time before Teshi stabs you in the back again. You know, I've joked about being the BCB Nostradamus, because it seemed like there were multiple times where things would happen in the canon that would mirror events of January, and even False Idol. But I realize now that I'm not Nostradamus. I am Cassandra, for she whom Apollo loved so dearly gave unto the gift of prophecy. But when she turned away from him, he turned it into a curse, making it so none believed her visions, and thus she could see all the tragedies that the future held, yet would be unable to alter it in any way. Here's to another year, folks. And remember, nothing gold can stay.
I'm just not a hateful or mean kind of a guy. I'm just fucking cheeky, sarcastic and dry. Some say I'm offensive, grotesque and obscene. I just don't give a fuck, and I say what I mean. Just like Amy Schumer, but without the disease. 'Cause it turns out the world's biggest cunt might be me.
Wake up. Yeah, I know it's late. Come downstairs. I got something to show you. You know what time it is, right? It's Christmas Eve! And I saved this special gift just for you. If you made it this far, it means one thing. It means you care. Or you just left this video running while you went to sleep, in which case, nightmare, nightmare, nightmare! Okay, but for real. Now that those Grinches are satisfied with their negativity set, I want to let you in on a little secret. You remember the point that I said I stopped reading BCB initially? See what the date was on that page? November 18th, 2013. 10 years. It's been 10 full years since that point in my life. Can you believe it? I know I can't. Yeah, I know it's pathetic. Embarrassing, so, but, thinking back on it, that was a terrible point in my life. I was out of high school and mentally lost. After my ordeal with BCB, not just with the comic, but with the community, I gave up. I gave up on what made me happy. I gave up on what I loved. I gave up on webcomics. I spent 2 years planning and plotting an idea that could be good enough, only to find out that in actuality, I did nothing. I was bitter, hateful, and angry at myself, at Teshi, at the comic. And when I went back to read the Paulo show, I found something. I could never get those 2 wasted years I lost back, but I could spend the next 8 getting better. And you know what? I did. I can honestly say that I've gotten better. Artistically speaking, that's, well, maybe not so much. But other than that, shit's been good for me. In a different place. Finally got a job doing something I couldn't even dream of doing before. Found some great friends along the way, and for the first time in my life got to travel alone to meet them. And I know, trust me, I hate getting sappy on my soapbox as much as you hate to hear it, but there's a reason I wanted to go back and talk about the Paulo show for Christmas. Because when I was at the lowest point in my life, and my pent-up anger over the comic was literally driving me insane, I realized something. For as awful as the comic is, irredeemably so, there was a reason I loved this comic. There was hope here. Does that make up for all the bullshit? Fuck no. But fuck it. Who cares? When this is all over, it won't be perfect. It won't make up for all the missteps and backstabs. But the one thing I can tell you for sure is that for as long as this comic is, in the end, it'll still feel too soon. So while you may hate this comic, and Christmas may make you grouchy, I want you to remember one thing. To quote the poet Ryan Peters, there's too much sun to let the cold world beat us. There is good in this world. And much like this comic, you may have to go through a lot of bullshit to find it. But when you do, hold on to it. Appreciate it while it's there. Shout your love with all your heart and rave about it as much as you rave about your hate. So that when it's over and you're forced to walk away, you rest easy knowing there's nothing more to say.
Take a look around, find something to like, cause I can't save us all, so good luck with your life.